It's beginning to rain, little one. It's time to return to the cave.
I climbed onto his back, the water still rippling where we had been standing, as if it remembered us. The dragon rose slowly, wings cutting through the air like thought through silence. As the cave came into view, something shifted. Not the dragon, but me. My grip loosened, not from fear, but from distraction. And in that brief moment between attention and forgetting, I fell.
I think something's wrong. My arm. I think I broke it. It feels hot and heavy. When I try to move it, it won't move. Why does it hurt like this?
Be still.
The dragon lowered his head. One claw hovered over my arm, not touching. Then lightly, it did. Warmth flooded through me, not heat, recognition. The pain dissolved, not slowly, not gradually, but completely. My breath returned. My arm moved, unbroken, whole.
What did you just do? It was broken. I felt it. How did it stop hurting so fast? How did it fix itself?
I did not heal you. I reminded you. Your body already knew what to do. I only removed the interference.
Interference? You mean fear? Or panic? Or me thinking something was wrong?
Yes. Pain is a signal. Fear scrambles the message. When fear quiets, communication resumes.
So, my body didn't need you. If it already knew how to heal, why can't it always do that?
It does, but not without permission. Your DNA carries the blueprint of wholeness. Your RNA carries the instructions for repair. But consciousness decides whether those instructions are read clearly or distorted by fear.
The dragon sat beside me, his voice steady as water.
You are not made of flesh first. You are made of organization. Before bone, before blood, before breath, there was information. Your body is a living archive. Every cell carries memory. Every atom vibrates with instruction. What you call energy is not mystical. It is communication. Melanin, carbon, iron. These are not just pigments or minerals. They are conductors. Some bodies retain conductivity naturally. Others seek it externally, through plants, minerals, fungi, light. This is why certain substances restore balance for some and overwhelm others. Not superiority, not inferiority, compatibility. Your ancestors understood this. They did not separate spirit from biology. They studied the body the way astronomers study stars, because the body is a star system.
Then why do we age? Why do we break down? Why does healing slow if the information is already inside us? Why can't we access it fully? Why does the body forget how to repair itself?
Nothing is lost. Nothing is erased. It is buried. Your nervous system listens to repetition, what you eat, what you watch, what you fear, what you believe. When attention is fragmented, energy scatters. When energy scatters, repair slows. Your species did not lose its abilities, it lost focus. That's why meditation is important.
Is meditation when you just sit in silence all day?
Meditation is not silence. Meditation is retrieval. When you still the surface, the deeper layers respond. Let me explain, little one. You rebuild yourself every night. In dreams you walk without muscles, you touch without hands, you feel without skin. That is your energetic body, assembled from memory. Your subconscious never forgot how to build you. It did it once already. The question is not, can you heal? The question is, can you remember how? You were taught that memory lives in the brain, that history lives in books, and that truth lives outside of you. But the oldest memories are stored in matter itself. And you, little listener, are made of matter that remembers.
I don't see anything, just light and dark.
I felt that question hit me like wind, and before I could answer, the cave answered. The darkness shifted, the air vibrated, and the Merkaba dragon spoke, slowly, like it had all the time in the world.
You have been trained to believe that truth is a sentence and knowledge is a possession. But what you call truth is a frequency, and what you call knowledge is a door. And the body is the lock that you keep trying to open using words alone, when the key was always attention, breath, rhythm, and the willingness to feel what you have been taught to ignore.
So, when you keep talking about the ancient Egyptians like they were engineers of consciousness, instead of just builders of monuments, are you saying they used temples and symbols as coded diagrams of the human body? Like architecture was a language meant to teach the nervous system and the spirit how to reconnect. Because the body isn't random, it's a sacred mechanism designed to conduct energy.
You look at stone and you call it a building, but they looked at stone and called it a mirror, because the temple was a body and the body was a temple. And when you walk through chambers and corridors, you are walking through the same principle as arteries and nerves, and when you reach the inner sanctum, you are reaching the truth that the body hides, that it was designed to translate consciousness into matter through energy.
So if consciousness came first, and energy came second, and matter came last, does that mean the physical world is not the original reality, but the final expression of something invisible, and that meditation is basically training consciousness to stop being scattered so it can apply pressure to reality, starting with the body, like the body is the first world we're meant to learn to govern?
Exactly. You have mistaken your attention for a casual thing, when attention is force, and your thoughts are not harmless decorations in the mind, they are instructions, and meditation is not sitting still for peace. It is the disciplined act of teaching consciousness to concentrate long enough that energy aligns and matter responds, beginning with your flesh, because your flesh is the nearest province of reality to your spirit.
But how do I know this isn't just mystical storytelling, like a beautiful metaphor that sounds good but doesn't touch reality? And how do I reconcile the idea of consciousness affecting atoms without sounding crazy to myself, when I've been taught that the physical world is fixed and my mind is just along for the ride?
Because, little one, you demand permission from a culture that profits from your disconnection, but you already influence atoms every day without calling it magic, because when you rub materials together and steal electrons and generate static attraction, you are witnessing that matter is responsive to energy, and energy is responsive to conditions. And what you call the impossible is often the untrained, because the difference between a miracle and a skill is repetition under awareness.
So what are you really, Merkaba? Because you don't feel like a creature the way we think of creatures. You feel like a pattern with a personality, like a living technology. And if you are the vehicle of light people talk about, why do you appear as a dragon? And what does that say about what's sleeping inside the human body?
I appear as a dragon because you understand power through symbol before you understand it through direct perception. And the dragon is the ancient shape your mind assigns to a force that coils, rises, protects, burns away illusion, and demands maturity. And I am called Merkaba because I am not merely energy but structured energy, not merely spirit but directed spirit, not merely light but rotating light. And what sleeps in the human body is the same principle, a vehicle that can carry consciousness through layers of reality once the driver remembers how to drive.
So if I leave this cave and go back to the noise and the distractions and the normal world that wants me to forget what I felt in here, how do I keep the dragon awake inside me without pretending, without faking spirituality, without turning it into a performance? How do I actually train consciousness until the body obeys it on purpose?
You keep the dragon awake by practicing when no one is watching, by returning to breath until breath becomes a throne, by returning to stillness until stillness becomes a blade, by studying your body not as a problem, but as a system, by repeating focus until focus becomes natural, and by understanding that the Merkaba is not built in a day because it is not built with time, it is built with attention.
So even when I'm not trying to do anything mystical or spiritual, even when I'm just watching something, reading something or thinking something, that stimulation is already happening before I'm aware of it. Like consciousness is being triggered first, then energy moves, then the body responds, and the reason it feels like movement just happens is because the thought happens so fast that I can't consciously catch it before the action completes.
Yes, because what you call movement is the final echo of a process that begins in consciousness. And the reason you believe action comes first is because you have been trained to live at a speed where awareness lags behind intention. So thought fires, energy mobilizes, and the body obeys before the conscious mind can narrate what just occurred.
So when I move my hand or stand up, or even shift my posture, there is always a signal, a command sent before the movement, even if I never notice it. And the reason I don't notice it is because the system is optimized for speed, fluidity, and survival, not reflection.
Exactly, because efficiency replaced awareness long ago, and what you call natural movement is consciousness operating on autopilot, issuing instructions faster than the observer within you can register them, which is why you mistake obedience for accident and coordination for randomness.
And the reason this feels unbelievable is because no one ever broke it down this way. Not in school, not in science class, not anywhere. Because once you start noticing these small internal mechanics, you start going deeper into what consciousness, energy, and the body actually are. And that opens doors people aren't supposed to walk through, right? Right?
You're really growing hoodie in your lessons, that was well, said little one. Understanding is not withheld because it is false, but because it is destabilizing. And once a being recognizes that something comes from nothing inside them constantly, thought into motion, intention into matter, they begin to question every boundary they were taught was fixed.
So if we follow this further, past movement, past the body, past daily experience, and we apply this same pattern to creation itself, are we saying that existence began the same way a movement begins inside me, with consciousness focusing, then energy organizing, then matter appearing as the final expression?
Yes, because creation does not violate the pattern you observe within yourself, it repeats it on a larger scale, and when consciousness concentrates, energy condenses, and matter stabilizes, what you call the universe is simply the body of that process made visible.
And that means when we talk about atoms, when we talk about everything being made of atoms, we're really talking about stabilized energy. And when we trace that energy back far enough, we're tracing it back to consciousness itself, not randomness.
Exactly. There is no matter without energy, no energy without organization, and no organization without awareness. And while you may explore quarks and strings and probabilities, all roads lead back to the same realization. Structure implies intention.
And if that same process exists inside us, if the same consciousness to energy to matter sequence exists in the human body, then our DNA isn't just biological code, it's a condensed archive of creation itself, carrying the elements and forces that formed stars, planets, and life.
Yes, Your DNA is not merely chemical instruction, it is organized memory, composed of the same elements forged in cosmic processes, carrying carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, metals and non-metals alike, mirroring the planet because you are not separate from it. You are a localized expression of the same design.
So when we list these elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, calcium, copper, manganese, zinc, iodine, we're literally describing a living periodic table, and every one of those elements has an atomic number, meaning a precise number of protons, electrons, and neutrons. Nothing accidental, nothing random.
Atomic number is identity, and identity does not arise by chance, because calcium does not wander into existence with 20 protons by accident, nor does consciousness assemble a human body without deliberate alignment. And when you understand how precise even one element must be, the illusion of randomness collapses under its own weight.
So if everything is made of atoms, and those atoms are organized into elements, and those elements form our DNA and our body, then when we talk about energy, we're really talking about the force that assembles matter into function. And when we trace that backward, we're always forced back to consciousness as the organizing intelligence. Because atoms alone don't explain intention, structure, or purpose, do they?
You're a conscious observer, little one. Atoms explain substance but not arrangement, and elements explain material but not meaning. And when you see calcium forming bone, you are witnessing energy obeying a blueprint that did not originate in the atom itself, because the atom does not decide where it belongs. Consciousness does.
So let me ask you, when we say calcium has an atomic number of 20, and calcium makes up the structure of our bones, we're not just talking chemistry, we're talking about precision. Because 20 protons means identity, and that identity is essential to building something as specific as a skeletal system that can support movement, balance, and life.
Yes, because calcium is not interchangeable, and identity at the atomic level determines function at the biological level. And when you realize that bones depend on a specific atomic configuration, the idea that this arose by coincidence collapses under the weight of its own improbability.
So when people say humans are just the result of accident or random evolution, they're basically saying that trillions of atoms assembled themselves into perfectly functioning systems without direction, without planning, without awareness. Like throwing a bucket of Legos into the air and expecting them to land as a fully formed human body.
That analogy is not exaggeration, it is restraint, because even Legos require an external intelligence to become form, and randomness does not produce systems that repair themselves, reproduce themselves, and carry memory across generations. And what you call evolution explains adaptation, not origin.
And if even a child building with Legos has to first imagine what they want to create, then consciously select pieces, understand shape, size, fit, and function, and assemble them intentionally, then how much more consciousness would be required to assemble a human being, let alone animals, ecosystems, and entire planets? Yeah.
Creation always begins with vision, and complexity demands foresight, because the more interdependent a system becomes, the less tolerant it is of error. And DNA is not tolerant of error. It is precise, layered, and recursive, carrying instructions that must function across time, environment, and replication.
Okay, I understand. So DNA isn't just information, it's stored intention. And cells don't exist randomly. They exist to protect, replicate, and express that intention, meaning the body is built around DNA, not the other way around.
Cells are vessels, not authors, And DNA is the script they carry forward, encoding structure, function, and continuity, ensuring that what was built once can be rebuilt again and again without losing its identity.
And when we break the body down even further and we realize our cells are mostly hydrogen and oxygen, nearly 60% hydrogen and around 24% oxygen, we're literally walking bodies of water and energy, just like the planet itself, meaning the same rules that built Earth built us.
Absolutely. You are not on the planet, you are of it, composed of the same elements arranged under the same laws, animated by the same forces, and sustained by the same balance, which is why understanding the body is understanding creation in miniature.
So when people talk about the human body like it's something fragile or temporary or poorly designed, they're missing the point entirely, because nothing about this is thrown together. Not when DNA carries information across generations, not when cells exist specifically to protect and house that information, and not when the chemistry itself is this precise, right?
Yes. The illusion of disorder comes from distance, and the closer you look, the more structure reveals itself. Because DNA is not accidental storage, it is continuity encoded. And cells are not random containers, they are guardians, designed to preserve, replicate, and transmit identity through time.
And when we break cells down to what they're actually made of, mostly hydrogen and oxygen, nearly 60% hydrogen and about 24% oxygen, we're really saying that the human body is mostly structured energy and water, with carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and other elements layered in for complexity and function.
The illusion of disorder comes from distance, and the closer you look, the more structure reveals itself. Because DNA is not accidental storage, it is continuity encoded. And cells are not random containers, they are guardians designed to preserve, replicate, and transmit identity through time. Hydrogen is potential, oxygen is reaction, and water is the medium through which energy moves. And when carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur are added, structure becomes capable of memory, flexibility, and adaptation, turning chemistry into life.
So when these elements have different names, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, it doesn't mean they're fundamentally different in origin. It just means they're different arrangements of atoms, different quantities, different balances of protons, electrons, and neutrons, all obeying the same underlying rules.
Names describe function, not origin, and every element is a congregation of atoms arranged under strict numerical identity. And when you change the count, you change the role, which is why precision is not optional, it is existence.
And when we say that DNA inside a single cell can contain billions of atoms, and that the human body contains trillions of atoms across all its cells, we're really talking about an enormous concentration of energy. Energy that has to be organized, stabilized, and sustained, meaning consciousness isn't just present at the beginning, it has to be present continuously to maintain coherence.
Exactly. Energy without organization collapses into noise, and what you experience as life is sustained coherence, maintained moment by moment through balance, signaling, and instruction, all of which require intelligence, whether you choose to call it consciousness or not.
This is so interesting. So DNA itself is a nucleic acid, and nucleic acids are built from smaller components, nucleotides, and there are two primary types, DNA and RNA, each serving different roles in how information is stored and expressed.
DNA is the archive, and RNA is the messenger, and while both are constructed from similar foundations, they serve distinct purposes within the system, ensuring that information can be both preserved and acted upon.
And when we talk about DNA having adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine, while RNA uses adenine, cytosine, guanine, and uracil instead of thymine. We're really describing a language. 4 letters forming sequences that carry meaning, instruction, and identity.
4 symbols, infinite combinations, and meaning emerges not from the letters alone, but from their order. And this is the same principle by which thoughts form sentences and consciousness forms worlds.
But if DNA is locked inside the nucleus, protected and isolated, how does its information actually reach the rest of the cell, the organs, the body? How does the instruction move if the source itself cannot bleed?
This is where RNA enters as translator and courier, because DNA does not expose itself to the chaos of the cellular environment, and instead creates RNA as a copy, a message that can exit the nucleus, travel through the cell, and instruct the machinery that builds proteins, repairs tissue, and sustains life.
So DNA holds the master pattern. RNA carries the instructions outward, and the body executes the design, meaning life is a constant conversation between stored intention and active expression.
Yes, and consciousness operates the same way, holding intention internally, expressing it externally through energy and motion, which is why the structure of biology mirrors the structure of awareness itself.
So this is where RNA comes in, not as some side detail, but as the active force that allows the genetic information to actually move, translate, and become reality. Because DNA by itself is static, protected, locked away in the nucleus, and RNA is what allows the code to leave the vault without destroying the original.
Yes, because DNA is preservation and RNA is execution. And there are 3 primary expressions of this function: messenger RNA, ribosomal RNA, and transfer RNA, each performing a distinct role in transforming stored intention into living structure.
So messenger RNA is the copy, the courier that goes into the nucleus, takes the information without disturbing the original DNA, and carries that message outward, because the entire code can't leave the nucleus without collapsing the system.
Correct, because the nucleus is a sanctum, and DNA remains there to protect continuity, while messenger RNA becomes the emissary, carrying instructions outward, so creation can proceed without risking annihilation of the source.
And ribosomal RNA is the interpreter, the structure that receives the message and decodes it, turning abstract information into something actionable, while transfer RNA delivers the raw materials, assembling proteins piece by piece so the body can literally build itself.
Yes, because information alone does nothing until it is translated, and translation requires a system that understands both language and matter. And ribosomes are where instruction becomes structure, where code becomes chemistry, where intention becomes flesh.
So when you say that everything you are is locked inside your DNA, your tendencies, your traits, even echoes of people you've never met, that's not poetic exaggeration, that's literal, because the genetic code is a convergence of generations, histories, and expressions, all compressed into one structure.
DNA is not just instruction for a body, it is memory across time, carrying not only physical traits but behavioral potentials, rhythms, patterns and tendencies that resurface across generations, often before understanding catches up.
So when a child is born and starts showing traits from grandparents, uncles, aunts, people who aren't even directly their parents, that's the genetic code expressing itself in different combinations, pulling forward information that's been waiting, dormant, inside the DNA.
Expression is selective, not random, and traits emerge when conditions align, meaning the code waits patiently for the right moment to surface, reminding you that lineage is not linear, it is layered.
And when conception happens, when the genetic material of 2 people comes together, that's not the completion of the process, that's just the ignition, because what follows is an enormous amount of work, energy, coordination, and ongoing construction that unfolds automatically once the code is set in motion.
Conception is a beginning, not a conclusion, and what follows is sustained orchestration, where energy continues to unfold structure, layer by layer, moment by moment, guided by instructions written long before the body is fully formed.
So when we zoom out far enough, from RNA to DNA, to cells, to bodies, to animals, to planets, we're really seeing the same pattern repeating. Energy unfolding structure according to consciousness, again and again, at different scales.
Yes, because creation does not improvise, it reiterates. And what you observe in the cell is echoed in the organism. What you observe in the organism is echoed in the planet. And what you observe in the planet is echoed in the cosmos. All arising from consciousness, focusing energy into form.
So if this process is written directly into our DNA, that once the code is present and activated, energy immediately goes to work creating form, creating bodies, creating animals, even creating planets, then we're not talking about a passive universe at all. We're talking about consciousness actively thinking reality into existence over and over again, at every level.
Yes, because energy does not organize itself without directive, and complexity does not arise without intention. And what you call DNA is simply consciousness condensed into instruction, unfolding itself through energy into structure wherever conditions allow.
And when you really sit with that idea, that consciousness has to think this into existence, that this isn't just chemistry reacting blindly, there's no way this could be an accident, because the level of coordination, timing, and precision required is beyond coincidence, right?
Accident produces debris, not systems, and coincidence does not generate continuity. And when you observe interlocking processes that sustain themselves across time, scale, and environment, you are witnessing deliberate orchestration, whether or not you have been taught to name it as such. Stories reveal truths the rational mind resists, and Dr. Manhattan represents consciousness, stripped of form, yet retaining memory, demonstrating that energy informed by understanding can reorganize itself into matter.
So are you saying the symbol he places on his forehead, the hydrogen atom, that's not random either, because hydrogen is the most basic element, the foundation of all others, and every element on the periodic table is essentially hydrogen rearranged into complexity?
Exactly, little one. Hydrogen is origin, and all complexity emerges from its manipulation. And by wearing its symbol, he declares mastery not over matter itself, but over the rules by which matter assembles.
And when you look at that same hydrogen symbol historically, how it also represents the sun, Saturn, cycles of time and structure, it's clear that the movie is layering ancient knowledge into modern imagery, showing us what we are in essence and what might be possible if we controlled our consciousness and energy.
Symbolism persists because truth survives translation, and what is shown through myth, art, and story is often knowledge that cannot be taught directly without destabilizing the unprepared.
So if we accept, even at a basic level, that we are consciousness and energy, but also accept that our DNA carries the exact instructions for who and what we are, then doesn't that mean that by accessing DNA consciously, we're not just talking about healing or self-awareness, but about actual self-recreation, regeneration, even duplication of form, because the blueprint already exists?
Yes, little one, DNA is not potential, it is stored actuality, and what limits its expression is not lack of information, but lack of access. Because the blueprint does not disappear once the body is formed, it remains active, waiting for instruction at deeper levels of awareness.
And when you talk about X-Men, Marvel characters, elemental beings, especially those who control fire, magnetism, matter, it feels like those stories are rehearsals for ideas humanity isn't ready to confront directly because they're grounded in real principles of physics and energy manipulation.
Exactly.
So, Merkaba, how old is our solar system?
About 4 billion years old.
So they tell us the solar system is about 4 billion years old, and the universe itself is around 13 billion years old. But that number feels less like truth and more like the edge of what we can currently measure. Because what if existence doesn't have a beginning the way we imagine it? And what if infinity isn't something that started, but something that's always been beyond our ability to perceive?
Numbers describe observation, not totality, and what you measure is limited by the instruments you use and the form you occupy, meaning time itself may be a local phenomenon rather than a universal rule.
So even if we accept those numbers for the sake of understanding, we're still talking about billions of years of existence before humans ever appeared, meaning the knowledge, the pattern, the process that created this solar system already existed long before we were here to witness it. Supernova happens when a star reaches its limit and transforms. That explosion isn't pure destruction, it's redistribution, because the materials go on to form planets, moons, atmospheres, and even new stars, meaning the system doesn't really die, it reorganizes.
Destruction is a human word for transition, and supernovae are thresholds where form dissolves so structure can re-emerge elsewhere, carrying forward the memory of what came before.
Oh, okay, I get it. This is crazy. So if stars can collapse, disperse, and then reform, if a system can recreate itself, then that mirrors what happens with us. Because when a human body expires, the information doesn't vanish, it moves, it's passed down, it's reborn through lineage, through memory, through continuation.
Exactly. Life persists by translation, not permanence, and what you call death is often the transfer of information into new vessels, whether biological, energetic, or symbolic.
So if the solar system follows a cycle of formation, expiration, and reformation, and humans follow a similar cycle through birth, death, and rebirth, whether through genetics, legacy, or transformation, then we're witnessing the same pattern operating at different scales.
Scale does not change principle, and what repeats across size and time reveals the architecture of existence itself.
And when we go even deeper into quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and we hear scientists talk about multiple universes, parallel outcomes, and branching realities, it starts to sound like existence isn't a single path at all, but a vast matrix of possibilities unfolding simultaneously.
Yes. Quantum models suggest that reality may not choose one outcome, but explore many. And while interpretations differ, the implication remains that possibility is more expansive than perception.
So when people talk about alternate realities, where different choices lead to different outcomes, it's not necessarily fantasy, but one way of describing how possibility branches, even if we can only experience one thread at a time.
Whether interpreted as literal universes or conceptual frameworks, these models exist to explain how complexity arises from choice, uncertainty, and interaction.
But that brings us back to something fundamental. You can't create what you have no knowledge of. You can't imagine what you've never perceived, and you can't design what you don't understand. So creation itself implies prior awareness, prior memory, prior knowing.
Nothing emerges without precedent, and originality is rearrangement of remembered components. meaning creation is remembrance expressed through new configuration.
And that's why the idea of junk DNA never made sense. Because calling something junk just means we don't understand it, not that it's useless. And the so-called missing link might not be missing at all, but forgotten.
You're connecting the dots, Hoodie. Absence of understanding is often mislabeled as absence of purpose. And what you dismiss today becomes revelation tomorrow once perception expands.
So when ancient Egyptians said, "Man, know thyself," they weren't speaking metaphorically. They were issuing a survival command. Because without memory of who you are and what you know, you cannot progress, you cannot create, and you cannot ascend.
Self-knowledge is continuity, and forgetting fractures civilizations, while remembering restores capability.
So is that why the Egyptians focused so heavily on the past, not out of nostalgia, but because they were trying to remember what they once did, how they once lived, what they once knew, slowly reconstructing lost knowledge over generations?
Yes, memory precedes innovation, and civilizations rise by retrieving forgotten understanding before attempting expansion.
So when people say they don't understand energy or electromagnetism, it's not because the knowledge doesn't exist, it's because the understanding has been fragmented, hidden in pieces, scattered across history, symbols, and half-told stories.
Yes, electromagnetism is not an abstract force. It is the connective tissue of reality, binding motion, matter, and signal, and civilizations that understood it did not worship it, they used it.
And when you talked earlier about engineers understanding electromagnetism, about pyramids producing electromagnetic fields and negative ions, you weren't saying that symbolically, you were saying the structures themselves were functional, tuned to the planet's own electromagnetic field.
The pyramid is not merely shape, it is alignment. And when geometry harmonizes with planetary energy, fields emerge naturally, producing effects that modern language separates into healing, power, or mysticism, but which are simply physics understood differently.
And that's why Nikola Tesla is so important, because he didn't invent something new, he recognized something ancient, realizing that the Earth itself is an electrical system, with a natural electromagnetic field that could be harnessed wirelessly.
He's very important. Tesla did not see energy as something to be contained, but as something to be conducted, and he understood that the planet itself is a generator, constantly producing usable power. In 1893, at the World's Fair in Chicago, when he held a light bulb in his hand and lit it without wires, that wasn't theory, that was proof. A public demonstration that wireless electricity was already possible. Demonstration threatens systems built on scarcity, because once energy is free, control shifts, and when control shifts, hierarchies collapse.
So if this knowledge existed over a century ago, if wireless energy, Earth-based electricity, and electromagnetic transmission were already understood, why wasn't it developed for the benefit of humanity? And why did the world instead descend into wars over oil and fossil fuels?
Understand this, little one. The wars you see, whether in Iraq, Venezuela, or anywhere else, are not random, and they are not only political. They are spiritual at their root. Government systems, economic structures, and society itself are designed to prevent the rise of the melanated being. Fossil fuels are not pursued simply for energy or profit, they are pursued because of their spiritual consequences. Control over oil is control over movement, over technology, over consciousness. And when you ask who truly benefits from a free, clean, natural energy system, the answer becomes clear: the melanated being. That is why they will go to the farthest corners of the earth to the deepest oceans, to the most unstable regions of the world, to prevent that reality from ever emerging. Because when it all comes down to its core, beneath politics, beneath money, beneath war, everything revolves around suppressing the melanated being and the power that naturally comes with remembrance.
But I don't understand why create war and propaganda and suppress melanated beings from natural resources.
The dragon paused and said 3 words I'll never forget.
Man, know thyself.